this shoot has been a disaster from the word go. Normally, this is 9:30 p.m. on a Thursday. Okay, this is 9:30 p.m. on a Thursday. All right, so normally this video is at least exporting by now, if not already scheduled and a past memory. But not today. No, not today. My camera has stopped working. My headset started acting funny, so I'm on a stick microphone. I guess that solves the problem of I don't know what to do with my hands, because now I've got one hand tied up pretty consistently now. I'm using a stick microphone, like some sort of stand-up comedian here. You're all laughing at my pain, so that must mean that the jokes are landing. My life is a joke. I had to borrow this microphone and this camera from the racetrack that has a race tomorrow, a race that I will be announcing. So I'm not getting good sleep because I'm going to have to shoot and edit this video and schedule it. And then go return all this equipment and go announce some sprint car racing, which is incredibly cool. If you want to watch, I'll be on Dirt Vision tomorrow night with Jacksonville Speedway. It'll be a great time. But it's besides the point here. I'm not trying to gaslight you, but I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for your enjoyment. So I hope you enjoyed this video, as you have so graciously let me know that you enjoyed all the past videos leading up to this point. And this is our first community video. It's the first video that we've all gathered around the campfire and put our votes in for, because it's round 4, or rather edition 4 of the Retro Racing Roundup. Howdy, folks. Welcome back. I can't believe it's been a month since we started making these, but it has. And now this one in stunning low quality, but not by choice. Not by choice. It will be better than this next week, I promise. But it's a very nostalgic day as we look back on the last 4 weeks of our time together. Now we turn the clock back even further to maybe the most nostalgia-driven and most meme-worthy race in Turn 200 NASCAR history, as well, as the viewers have decided that the 4th edition of the Retro Racing Roundup today will be the 2011 Brickyard 400, which is it's a fantastic race. It won by a landslide as well, should I add. I like this race a lot, but this race was nominated by my iRacing broadcasting partner in crime, Mr. Matt Williamson. Mr. Matt, the GOAT Williamson. And there is a reason that he suggested this race, and it will be revealed later in the video. But to get to there, we got to start, so I guess let's get into it. Well, if you're watching these videos like here and now, like as soon as they're coming out, first of all, thank you very much. Even if you're watching down the line, thank you as well. But this will be our very first jump. If you're watching chronologically, this will be our first jump backwards in the same year from video to video. The last video, of course, we did the 2011 Ford 400, which was a fantastic race. And honestly, it capped off a pretty fantastic season as well. I think 2011 is kind of slept on, to be honest. 2011, start to finish, kicks ass, especially the way it starts. It starts with Trevor Bayne winning the Daytona 500. Which I talked about a lot in the previous video as well, but it will be its own video someday. It's not on the list yet, so maybe you should nominate it in the comments. I try not to put too many races that I personally want to see in the comments. I want you to tell me what to do, so go right ahead. But Trevor Bayne winning the Daytona 500, insanely cool. And then we sort of keep that energy up through the course of the season. We get a ton of different winners in victory lane, as well as a few first-time winners. Regan Smith, who had already won a race, but I won't get into that here. He wins the Spring Darlington race and with his first asterisk career cup victory. And then David Reagan, who could have won the Daytona 500, but sort of screwed himself out of it. He finally gets it done anyways at Daytona the next time they come around in July. So heading into round 20 of the 2011 season, we actually have 12 different drivers who have won a race, which is fantastic. Doesn't quite rival what we've gotten here in the modern times in 2022 with the first season of the next gen, but 12 different drivers in the first 20 races is pretty cool. You can't deny. So also keep in mind, with 12 different drivers who have won a race, in theory, we also have 12 spots in the playoffs that are available, or the playoffs. How about the chase instead? But the chase for the Sprint Cup at this point is the top 12 drivers and overall points. There's no wild card system yet. That comes in 2012. But these 12 drivers that have won a race, they're not the exactly, with the first couple of first-time winners, as well as Trevor Bayne not even going full-time for the points. He's eligible for the Nationwide Series points in 2011. So we have a couple of drivers in there that have not won a race yet in the points hunt. So seemingly this car has opened up the door for some parity, at least in 2011. But one track that is not really known for its parity is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Heading into round 20 of the 2011 season, all eyes are, of course, on Hendrick Motorsports, as they should be at Indianapolis. They always dominate here. You hear the term on the pre-race show a lot, feast or famine, or boom or bust, rather, I guess, for Hendrick Motorsports in recent years at Indianapolis. But I would say it's been more boom, that is for sure. So let's look at some of the Hendrick Motorsports drivers, shall we? Jeff Gordon is looking to become the only driver in the 100-year history of the track up to this point to win 5 races on the oval. Michael Schumacher won 5 U.S. Grand Prix, but that was not on the oval, of course. Jeff Gordon is trying to become the first driver to win 5 races on the oval. He's been on a pretty good roll of late as well. He has scored a win in his last 6 races, as well as a runner-up finish at Sonoma, and 2 more top 10s to boot. He has 2 wins overall in the season, but has been digging himself out of a bit of a hole in the points and enters the day 7th in the standings. Meanwhile, the 5-time and defending series champion Jimmy Johnson. This is usually the point in the season where he really turns it on, where he really gets it fired up. But is he really doing that? Yes and no. I mean, he hasn't scored but 1 victory all season long, and it was his win at Talladega. Yes, that win at Talladega. He did not win that race by much, but it is a victory nonetheless. That is his only win of the season thus far. His last 6 races have sort of been a microcosm of what he's been experiencing all season long. 3 top 5s, but then 2 finishes outside of the top 20. But with that said, if Jimmy does happen to turn it on in classic Jimmy fashion, like we're used to seeing, he won't have far to climb before he hits the playoffs. He is second in points, coming into one of his best tracks, Indianapolis, and just 7 points behind the points leader, Carl Edwards, who, you know, if you watched last week's video, you know he is leading the points basically on consistency alone. The results have been good. He only has 1 win up to this point in the season, and I'll let you know a little secret, just in case you didn't watch last week's video and you don't plan on it. He only wins 1 race this whole season, and technically he does finish first in the points, so there's that. The other 2 Hendrick Motorsports drivers are maybe a little bit further back than they were hoping to be. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Has not won in 2011. In fact, he has not won a race since July of 2008 up to this point. But I say that pretty much every week now. I talked about Jeff Gordon's 6-race streak results, and I'll tell you, 6 races ago to this point, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was looking pretty good despite not having the win. He did come close to winning a couple of times, most notably the Coca-Cola 600, LOL. But starting it with 6 races ago, his best finish is 15th. He has 4 finishes in this stretch outside of the top 20, so it has not been a good stretch for Dale Earnhardt Jr. And 4th is Mark Martin, and I think the less said, the better for Mark Martin's final year at Hendrick Motorsports. He is coming off of back-to-back 22nd place finishes, which is the best of his finishes in the last 6 races. He enters the race 20th in the overall points. Not a good stretch for Mark Martin. So it always seems to be Hendrick Motorsports that proves to be the stable to watch, if you will, coming into Indianapolis. But Chip Ganassi is another name synonymous with the big rectangle. And after so many years of trying, 2010 was finally the year that he got that elusive Indianapolis NASCAR victory with Jamie McMurray winning the Brickyard 400 just a year ago, after coming tantalizingly close with Juan Pablo Montoya the last 2 years before that. But on the other side of this equation, if you're lumping in IndyCar and NASCAR double owners, Roger Penske has yet to claim victory in NASCAR at Indianapolis as well. His two drivers this season are Kurt Busch, who is doing okay despite not having a victory up to this point, and Brad Keselowski, who is now in the flagship number 2 car, and he is having himself a banner year. So Penske are looking to take one at Indy in a stock car for the very first time. I keep messing with the hat. Hat is coming off. I have hair. I like the hair that I have. And I think everybody should be proud of what they're rocking on their head, whether they have hair or whether you don't have hair. Absolutely scalp positivity here on Turn 200. With that said, let's go now to a hot and slick Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Indiana. It is July 31st, 2011. After selling out what ended up being one of the worst NASCAR races of all time just 3 years prior to this, there are now only 138,000 people here today. Down almost 120,000 people from capacity. Yikes! It is almost 90 degrees today, which does not help that situation, I can tell you that. On what will be the season opener for ESPN's NASCAR Cup coverage. Yep, 4 races here on the Retro Racing Roundup, and all 4 of them have been on ESPN. Not complaining too much, but I would like to see a little bit of variety here soon. It's the usual crew on the pre-race show: Nicole Briscoe, soon-to-be Hall of Famer Rusty Wallace, and NBA legend and car owner Brad Doherty. The lead-in story here today is some puff piece on the pre-race show about Kyle Busch trying to basically do a face turn after some run-ins on and off track. His days of over-aggression and flying off the handle are behind him. And it also, he says that people view him so negatively, partially because of his brother, Kurt. So that statement, I think, should probably put it into perspective, how he really views his negative perception and the situation as a whole. I would personally argue we are not even to peak flying off the handle Kyle Busch just yet. Of course, Ron Hornaday Gate is coming at the end of this season, so we're not even close to peak flying off the handle Kyle Busch, I don't think. We then get a pre-race concert from Rascal Flatts, who are on tour at this point to promote a record. Despite this, they play a song that was released over 5 years ago. We then jump to a sports science segment on saving fuel, which I guess is kind of cool that they were doing that. We then talk to our pole sitter, the aforementioned David Reagan. They mentioned several times that this was David Reagan's first career pole, but it in fact was not. He had actually won the pole at Texas earlier that season. But David is running a blue UPS scheme in honor of gentleman Ned Jarrett, who had been named as a member of the second class of the NASCAR Hall of Fame just within the last week. This car is pretty sick nasty, dude. Like from the white wheels to that shade of blue, super, super cool. It is mentioned that David is in a contract year. Unfortunately, does not have anything locked down with Roush Fenway for 2012. Unfortunately, he is not performing very consistently despite the win, and will not get picked up for the 2012 season. He ends up being replaced by nobody. Yep. That car just becomes vacant. It becomes a part-time car for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He runs maybe 5 or 6 races in it in 2012 and then 1 race in it in 2013. But David Reagan will, of course, move on to Front Row Motorsports after this season, but he's going to kind of waffle back and forth on the success meter for the rest of 2011. But today is another day. Maybe, perchance, he will do well, starting from the pole. After this interview, we jump into opening ceremonies where Reba McEntire sings America the Beautiful, followed by the national anthem from Rascal Flatts, and the command of fire engines that's given by the chairman of the board at IMS, Mary Holman George. Then we get the handoff from Nicole Briscoe to our action movie hero star, Alan Bestwick, and his merrymen, Dale Jarrett and Andy Petrie. We get to the ESPN in-race reporter, Carl Edwards, the points leader. Shout out to Tim in Evansville, Indiana. Hey, for pointing out that Jack Roush had yet to score victory at Indianapolis. Carl says it would be cool to win one for Jack here at Indy, and then Dale turns around and pretty much asks him the exact same question again for a second time, and Carl luckily answers it differently because he is a professional. As the pace car driver, who is Hope Solo for this race, pulls the Corvette pace car down pit road, we get ready for 160 laps, which is 400 miles around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. David Reagan and Kasey Kahne go side by side into turn number 1, and from the outside pole, Kasey Kahne goes up to the lead. Reagan then drops right away back to the third spot behind Kurt Busch, but as Kurt heads through turn 4, he will actually hit the wall and begin to drop like a rock through the field. A pretty eventful opening lap here. Lap 3, Jeff Gordon is already up 2 spots just outside of the top 5 now. AJ Allmendinger and Jimmy Johnson both find their way past Kurt Busch up to 3rd and 4th respectively. Before the lap is over, Jeff Gordon and Matt Kenseth get through as well. Lap 5, and we get a shot of someone who we have yet to mention today, Mr. Paul Menard, as he is battling with Montoya for 12th. As they battle away, we cut to a shot of a 4/5 wide pass down the back straightaway with Tony Stewart, old Tony Stewart, aka Joey Logano, and Dale Jr. coming out ahead, while Ryan Newman and Casey Mears in the Germain Racing 13 losing some spots in the exchange. That was for 19th place, by the way. As they head to turn 4, Joey sort of chops down on Dale Jr., who sends it into the left rear quarter panel of the 21, an absolutely bonkers save from sliced bread, but that will cost him 8 spots, but at least he gets to keep racing. Same lap, and Trevor Bayne has picked up some debris on the grill and says he needs to come down to get it cleaned. There seems to be a lot of garbage blowing around today, and it is going to cause a few more problems before the end of this race. We go to commercial on lap 10 and come back on lap 14, where Gordon has gotten past Allmendinger for 3rd and is working on David Reagan for 2nd. He gets the pass done heading into turn 1 on lap 15. Gordon is now trying to track down Kasey Kahne, who will be his teammate in that 5 car next year, but Kahne in 2011 is trying to breathe some life into the dying, almost rotting corpse at this point of Team Red Bull. Kahne is the best performing driver of the 3-car stable. The other 2 drivers are Brian Vickers in the 83, who is coming off of his medical problems, as well as Cole Witt in the 84, who had to be a last-minute replacement for Scott Speed because they had some contract failures or angry discussions. Not 100% sure what happened there, but Scott Speed no longer in the 84. Kasey Kahne, the best performing driver of the 3, like I mentioned, he's coming off of just his 7th top 10 finish of the season, though, last week at New Hampshire. So this is a pretty good showing for Kasey Kahne, all things considered thus far, who is going to lead a lot of the early portion of this race. Something I forgot to mention last week was the audience participation segment that ESPN and AT&T cooked up in 2011, and they were doing it through Homestead as well. I just forgot to mention it. They had a text-in line for who fans thought was the fastest pit crew every race, which to me, that doesn't make any sense because that's a quantifiable stat. Like, you could actually prove, no matter how you want to do it, if you want to do it by race and award it by race, if it's the top overall, if it's an average of all pit stops throughout the season, that is a quantifiable thing. It's like, be sure to text us here at 999-99200 and tell us who finished 7th place last week. Like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense to me. Why not vote every week on who has the best paint scheme or who has the best hair? I don't know. Just something that isn't like an actual measurable stat. Why waste audience participation on that? But oh well. And by the way, they show it later in the standings. Paul Menard is leading this fan poll. I guess John Menard is like having all the Menards employees vote on it during in like actual paid time, like on the clock. I don't know how Paul Menard pulled this off. I don't know how it's not Dale Jr. I don't know how every audience participation thing isn't Dale Jr. But good on you, Paul. Tangent over. Here we go. Lap 25. AJ Allmendinger pits a little bit early here from inside of the top 5. And across the next 3 laps, everybody is going to find their way back onto pit road. Tony Stewart picks up a penalty after he tries to pass Kevin Harvick on pit entry, but Harvick doesn't let him into line, and why should he? Tony doesn't yield either, and then he clips the pit cone. So on lap 29, Landon Castle is the only driver who has yet to pit. So he is leading the way in James Finch's number 51 car. But as we cut to break, Castle pits and gives the lead back to Casey Kane. Lap 35, we are under caution for the first time today. And again, as we are in peak phantom debris era cautions in NASCAR here, it is sort of a relief that they actually spot some debris down the backstretch, but it is also at the same time a little bit infuriating that it is just for a water bottle that Kyle Busch tried to throw into the grass and it rolled back out on the track. And don't worry, we're not done with ridiculous Kyle Busch cautions yet today. Some cars stay out here under the caution as we are about 7 to 10 laps out from when these guys just hit pit road. Matt Kenseth, David Ragan, and AJ Allmendinger are the first three off of the pits. Under the caution, Carl Edwards says his engine has been surging down the straightaway, so that isn't going to bode well for his chances today. I think, and I'm sort of going meta here, but I'm pretty sure this is the last time I put Carl Edwards in the script, so that is about how well that bodes for Carl Edwards' day. Restart on lap 38, Casey Kane jets away from Jimmy Johnson and Jefferson Gordon, and Mark Martin tries to clear himself down on Juan Pablo. That does not work at all. Lap 42, we are 3 wide back in the pack again with David Rudiman passing underneath of Tony Stewart and Joey Logano into turn 3. Brian Vickers will follow through the gap as well. They point out on the next lap that Denny Hamlin is up 35 spots from where he started. Denny actually blew the motor in that car in practice and had to start all the way in the back. Lap 45, from inside the top 10, Dale Jr. says he's about to blow up, so they clean the grill off and send him back on his way. Lap 50, we are getting ready to go to commercial after an astounding 26 seconds back from the last commercial break, but then the caution comes out for a second time and forces ESPN to actually stay and cover some of the race. Something is broken on the front end of David Rudiman's car, and he slams the wall in turn 4. Pretty much everybody is coming in now, and a few guys elect to take 2 tires, those being David Ragan, Paul Menard, and Kyle Busch. Casey Kane has a lug nut come loose on the left front tire and comes out all the way back in 8th after coming in from the lead. So Dale Jr. now, who, remember, came in under green to get his grill clean, which sounds like a euphemism, admittedly, but I promise it isn't. He stays out here and is in control of this restart with David Ragan to his outside. Here on lap 55, Earnhardt, despite being on some older tires, pulls away big time. Lap 57 now, and why is it only Tony Stewart that seems to be able to make these big time 3-wide passes? Next time by, Jeff Gordon is able to get around David Ragan for second, and Jeff is slowly looking like he is going to be the driver to beat today. Is anybody really that surprised? Listening to Dale Jr. and Steve Letarte on the radio was that big-time hit of nostalgia that I didn't know that I needed today, but I was very glad to hear it.
I mean, that wasn't bad. That right there, you were running the same speed as the leader. I would need to stay out if you wanted to get that track position back. Yeah, me and you are on the same plan, buddy.
And as Jeff is working over Dale Jr. for the top spot, Alan Bestwick says that there are some tracks that are Dale Jr. territory and some tracks that are Jeff Gordon territory, and he compares it to red and blue states. I'm not sure if I agree with that one, but it's funny to think about, I guess. Jeff is going to get past Jr. for the lead as we go to commercial break. Coming to lap 70, and the aforementioned soon-to-be Hall of Famer gentleman Ned Jarrett stops by the booth to hang out with his son for a couple of laps. Lap 74 now, and the defending race winner Jamie McMurray makes an unscheduled stop because his car was becoming undrivably tight, despite him asking for the car to be tightened up on the last stop. Jr. then comes in to pit a couple of laps later. I think Jr. is actually going to be sitting pretty here if we could stay green long enough for the field to cycle all the way through. We go to break and come back on lap 80 with a rash of drivers on pit road. Most of the drivers inside the top 10 have stayed out up to this point. One exception is the hard charger of the race, Dennis Hamlin. Lap 82, here comes Jeff Gordon from the lead. Matt Kenseth will follow him in and give the lead to Jimmy Johnson. Johnson comes in next time by. He has a little bitty piece of tape flapping from the side skirt of that car. How cute. As Jimmy Johnson pits from the lead, he gives up the top spot to Paul Menard. Paul Menard. Paul Menard. I'm going to do it again. I'm sorry. I've mentioned him a couple of points up to this point, but let's take a look at his 2011 season until he gets to Indianapolis. He came into this race 19th in the overall points with 3 top 5 finishes on the season. He had one 4-race stretch about late spring where he has no finishes inside of the top 20, And I think that's really a big reason why he is where he is in the points. I definitely think even if he improved those races just a few positions, he would have been sitting a lot higher in the points. He's pretty consistently like a 10th to 15th place driver up to this point in 2011, driving in his first season for Richard Childress Racing in the 27 car. But Paul says the Brickyard 400, dag nabbit, that is his number one priority on the season. He says it's his favorite race. It's the race that he would do absolutely anything to win. It's no secret. Paul Menard, his dad, I've mentioned already, is John Menard Jr., always on the border of cracking into the top 100 richest people in the world. The Menard family and Indianapolis are pretty synonymous. He has had the Menard name on the side of a lot of winning race cars in IndyCar up to this point. So for Paul to run well at Indianapolis, not only is it a priority, but it would be really, really special if he was able to do something incredible today. But for now, Paul is going to stay out for one more lap and then give up the lead heading to pit road. Next time by lap 84, Juan Pablo has to give up his position to David Reagan to get all this damn trash off the grill. The green flag pit cycle didn't exactly work out for Dale Jr. like I was envisioning it. He is still behind his teammates Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson back in P3. Lap 94 and caution number 3. It is actually for debris this time, and Kevin Harvick is going to go ahead and run right over that. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Lots of 2-tire stops here. Matt Kenseth wins the race off of pit road with Jimmy Johnson making contact with Brian Vickers behind him. Kyle Busch is also going to make contact with Tony Stewart. Coming to the lap 99 restart here, and if you are from Wisconsin, insert the Vince McMahon falling backwards out of his chair gif in here. You are undoubtedly on your feet with a beer in one hand and a block of cheese in the other, because the front row for this restart is Paul Menard and Matt Kenseth. As we go to turn 1, we enter the Izod speed zone. This is essentially Fox's Crank It Up, but categorically worse. They do it only until the leader enters turn 3, and then they stop. I wonder why it didn't make it past this race. So after the contact on pit road, Jimmy Johnson and Brian Vickers are both smoking the tires. Brian's looks like it clears itself. Jimmy is not having that sort of luck. He will also get rooted up off the bottom of the track by Kurt Busch just for good measure, just in case he wasn't having enough fun already. So Paul Menard leads 8 laps after the restart until Matt Kenseth, like we've seen so many times this race, and we just saw seconds ago, finds a little bit of space underneath the Paul and moves his way underneath the 27. Paul is going to walk it up the track, but he saves it. Will lose 3 spots in the process, but keeps on keeping on. Lap 113, and we are now under caution for the 4th time, and it is because Kyle Busch touched the wall. Like, what? What the goddamn hell is this caution for? This is, and maybe this is a little bit of hyperbole, but this may be the weakest caution of all time. I dare you to find me an example, a non-phantom debris caution example of a worse caution than this, because this is bad. This is really bad. So they've not been using the race off of pit road pylon graphic all day, and I may know why now, because Clint Bowyer apparently just took a shitload of tires on that pit stop. I'd definitely be casting my vote for Clint Bowyer to win the AT&T Fastest Pit Crew Award, because that is a thing you can do. Matt Kenseth entered with the lead, but took 4 tires and will now come out in 7th ahead of Jeff Gordon, who also took 4 tires. Quite a few drivers elected not to pit under this caution. Brad Keselowski is now the leader, and he's elected the outside. Jeff Burton is in 2nd, with Jamie McMurray and Landon Castle also staying out. 43 laps to go in the restart. McMurray wiggles up the track and smokes the tires with Castle. Remember that McMurray drove through Castle at Homestead in last week's video, so maybe this is where that beef started. Who knows? 2 laps later, Castle is fighting to stay inside of the top 5 here, when all of a sudden everybody decides to put this poor man on the outside middle of 4 wide. Castle either gets arrow pulled by the 6 or just turns in a little bit too early, and he is going to lose it. He slides down the track, and a lot of people are about to go landscaping to miss the 51 here, including Paul Menard. Caution number 5 is out with 41 laps to go, and look at all this damn grass on the track. So some of these drivers under this caution realize that they're probably about 2 laps away from being good to the finish on fuel. Those drivers all come in under this caution at least once, maybe twice. Paul Menard, Tony Stewart, Brian Vickers, Trevor Bayne, Regan Smith, Mark Martin, and more. What is going to help them is going an extra couple of laps under caution to basically pick up all the grass clippings that were left behind from the last accident. 34 laps to go. Brad Keselowski is still in the lead, and he again elects the outside. He clears Burton down to hold on to the top spot. Clint Bowyer sneaks by his teammate Burton for second. Coming to 30 laps to go, and some of the leaders start to peel off for pit road, but Matt Kenseth doesn't get the memo that Jeff Burton is going to be one of those drivers. How does Jeff hang on to this car? Next time by, Brad pits from the lead and brings a few others with him. The next lap after that, Clint Bowyer is going to give up the lead and brings a hard-charging Matt Kenseth with him in to get their final service of the race. 2 laps after that, Jeff Gordon comes in and says he is plowing tight. The crew is going to just give him 2 tires to try and combat the issue. And after this, the last driver who isn't going to try and make it the rest of the way on fuel is David Reagan. He will surrender the lead to Tony Stewart. With 18 laps to go, Tony asked his crew chief, Darian Grubb, if he needs to save a lap and a half of fuel, and Darian Grubb says that actually they are 8 laps short on fuel. What? How do you... I guess what they're waiting on a caution now to maybe salvage this strategy. But spoiler alert, he is going to pit with 16 laps to go. Now, taking the point, leading a line of 7 cars who are all flirting with the NASCAR mandated minimum speed in an attempt to save as much fuel as possible, Paul Menard. Yes, our man Paul Menard. Behind him is Mark Martin, Jamie McMurray, Regan Smith, Kyle Busch, and Trevor Bayne. 14 to go. McMurray tries to go for a 2-for-1. He takes second from Mark Martin, but can't quite take the top spot from Paul Menard. With 11 laps to go, Jeff Gordon is the highest running driver who has enough fuel to make it to the end. Gordon is in 11th and is 11 seconds behind the leaders and is a full second a lap faster than Paul Menard. The numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for Menard at the Brickyard. Trevor Bayne starts passing cars in this line here, and you think maybe he has enough fuel, and Trevor is going to do it again at another crown jewel race, but he's actually been told that they are pitting him in 3 laps, and he needs to go like hell so they can still have a decent finish. Coming to 8 to go, and the pass for the lead happens. Jamie McMurray passes Paul Menard. So maybe Jamie Baby has enough gas to go the distance. Well, his crew chief tells him that he is 2 laps short on fuel, but actually what Jamie hears, and he says this in the post-race, he thought his crew chief said he was half a lap short. So a lap and a half discrepancy between these two, and it's not going to go in Jamie's favor, unfortunately. Jeff Gordon starts to make his way into the picture. He is closing at a rate greater than a second a lap now, but Jeff doesn't know why he's not in the lead right now.
How many I'm trying to get? Everybody in front of us is a spot here. Everybody's a spot. Jeff, they're all saving.
4 to go now. Paul Menard's crew chief, Slugger Labby, says, Paul, go, boy, go. And boy, does he go. He leaves Jamie McMurray in the dust and hopes that he can leave Jeff Gordon far behind him as well. 3 to go. Mark and Jeff both pass Jamie into turn 1. Gordon will pass Mark into turn 3 for second place and now has poor Paul Menard right in his crosshairs. Menard is ahead of the odds-on favorite at Indianapolis, the 4-time race winner looking for a history-making 5th victory last lap. Mike Bliss doesn't exactly get out of the way, does he? But he will also hold up Jeff Gordon. Does Paul Menard have enough gas to make it back to the line? Yes. Yes, he does. And Paul Menard brings the family name to Indianapolis to victory lane. And Paul will get to claim his first career Sprint Cup Series victory and kiss the bricks at the race that he says is the most important to him on the calendar. Post-race interviews, and Jeff takes his second place finish on the chin for the rest of the regular season. After this, Jeff will only finish outside of the top 10 just one more time. But this hot streak for Jeff does not go with him into the chase. Unfortunately, Jeff finishes pretty far down the pecking order when all things are said and done at Homestead. And for Paul, well, unfortunately, he does not make the chase after this. He will finish down in 17th in the overall points, only grabbing 2 more top 10 finishes for the rest of the season. But I'm sure that this victory will probably take a little bit of the sting out of that. Paul is still, to this day, because we don't race on the oval anymore, unfortunately, the only driver in Cup Series history to claim their first career victory at the Indianapolis Oval. Only 5 of the drivers who won the Brickyard 400 never became Cup Series champions afterwards, and Paul is third in this lineage. The other 2 drivers to come after this are Ryan Newman and Casey Kane. This would end up being, as Paul Menard is now retired, this would end up being Paul Menard's only Cup Series victory. He would stack 4 more podium finishes up until he retires at the end of the 2018 season, rather. But he can never really get that close to grabbing that elusive second career Cup Series victory. All in all, this is an awesome race. I'm going to go ahead and breeze through the ratings here because there is more to this story that we need to get to here in a timely fashion. I enjoy the racing here. So this is a pretty easy 7 out of 10 for me. The whole finish of the race as well is pretty exciting. That entire closing stretch with about 15 laps to go. Watching a whole host of guys that really need good runs. Also guys that I like to cheer for around this time as well. They need good runs. So it's cool to see them battle it out. It's also cool to see my favorite driver, Jeff Gordon, try and work his way up through the field and absolutely haul ass to get up to the front, even though he did come a little bit short. But I thought his charge through the field was awesome, and those last few laps where he is really trying to get after it behind Paul Menard are really cool. So 7.5 out of 10 on the finish for this. For memorability, maybe it doesn't get talked about enough with the Indy Oval not really being in use anymore. But whether that's fair or not, I think I'm going to have to rate it at a 4 out of 10. I just don't think really anybody talks about it that much. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like this one is either slept on or just not talked about. So 4 out of 10. And historical significance, maybe like a 4.5. It is Paul Menard's big moment to shine as a NASCAR driver, and we all sort of love, I guess, the one-hit wonder. That's kind of a derogatory term. I don't mean it that way, but that's really the only thing I can think of. And this does deny Jeff Gordon his historic 5th Brickyard 400 title, at least for another few years anyway. So there is some weight to this, but not a whole bunch. I feel like 4.5 is fair. So with a score of 22.5 out of 40, just over the 50% mark there, you may be wondering why in the hell is this one of the first 5 editions of the Retro Racing Roundup? Well, because, it's a good race. It's passing. It's got a passing grade. May not be one of the all-time greats, but, it's still a good race, an enjoyable one at that. But also, it's a good meme. And we love memes here on Turn 200. It is one of the classic Turn 200 memes. Why? Well, I alluded to my broadcast partner on iRacing earlier, Mr. Matt Williamson. Also heads up the shorts department here at Turn 200 as well. You've probably seen one of those and not even known it. But he has a story to tell about the 2011 Brickyard 400 and the meme-worthy aftermath of this race.
First of all, Tommy, thank you for having me on the Retro Racing Roundup. It is by far my favorite thing that we do here on our channel, but I am actually featured in this one, so I'm pretty excited. The 2011 Brickyard 400, it's a special one for me because it was my first ever NASCAR race in person. And at this point, I was about 14 years old. I actually grew up in more of a motorcycle racing family, but, we like all motorsports. So my dad took me to the Brickyard. Me and my mom and my dad all packed up from just outside of Peoria, Illinois, and went over to Indianapolis just for the day. We didn't stay the weekend. My dad bought me a scanner. I didn't really know what I was doing because we didn't watch a whole lot of NASCAR racing. So as far as like strategies and different things that will end up playing out in this race, I wasn't privy to how everything works at this point. So it was fun. I went back and watched about the last half of this race just a couple days ago, and it was pretty exciting and pretty interesting to watch it all these years later. There were a lot of different things that I remember from the day. One interesting thing, and I sent Tommy a picture, so I think he might use it here, but this Jeff Gordon hat right here, the red one with the 24 logo on it, I was actually wearing that day. I've had that for years, so there's a picture of me about 12 years ago wearing that hat. at my first ever NASCAR race. And I remember we sat in turn 1 underneath the awning, and I could not believe how loud the cars were. And it was amplified because the noise from the cars would ricochet off that metal awning right down onto you. It was one of the loudest things I'd ever heard in my life. And I'd been to a lot of motorcycle races, so it was a pretty cool experience. That's one of the number one things I remember about it. So I'll get to the actual race now. This race is a big moment in the lore of my NASCAR fandom. Between myself and Mr. Tommy Cook, because there's a little meme that's going to arise later on in my life. Unfortunately, I didn't necessarily understand all the strategy at the time. All I knew at the end of the race is my man Jeff Gordon was running down the leaders, and I saw people diving into pit road, and some people were talking about running out of fuel, so I had to go back and watch the race to really remember exactly how it went, because in my 14-year-old recollection, I thought that Jeff had actually run out of fuel or was running out of fuel and had to pit late in the race. And I was actually wrong about that. And it's really funny because even watching the replay of the race just a few hours ago, I know what the outcome is. And when I'm watching the end of this race, in my head, I'm still thinking, man, Jeff can catch Paul Menard. Man, he's going to get there. He's going to get there. I already know what the outcome is, but it was such an exciting race. Watching it back again all these years later, it still brought up those same emotions that I had in the stands watching Jeff try to track down the guys that were saving fuel. Although I went home that day dejected, not happy that my driver, the 24 car, did not win that day. Looking back on it in history, Paul Menard's one and only win happens at Indianapolis, and they talked about it on the broadcast. It's a place that's really special to him and his family. You know, storyline-wise, I don't think it could have ended up any better, but for 14-year-old me that day, my dreams were absolutely crushed. So that brings us to later on in my life, after Jeff retires, Tommy and I start going to races together. Also to note, at this point in my life, I did not know Tommy when I was 14. So years later, when we meet each other and we start talking about and figure out that we're NASCAR fans and we like the sport, we start going to Talladega together. And when Jeff retires, I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to root for. And the meme begins. I tell him about my very first ever race, this race at the Brickyard, and he says, well, I guess you got to be a Paul Menard fan now. And I think Paul was in the 21 car for the Wood Brothers at that time, so I became a Paul Menard fan for just a few years until he decided to pack up and get out as well. There may be a story of me very drunkenly pleading and begging for Paul Menard to get towards the front of the field, and then coming back to his car on a wrecker, going around out of turn 4 at Talladega, and me just absolutely unloading a plethora of curse words that probably should not be said in public, but there they were. So this race has a lot of history with me and how I became a NASCAR fan, the drivers that I've rooted for in the past. Everything has come to a head here in the 2011 Brickyard 400. Special race for me, and a pretty damn good race in NASCAR history, especially if you like fuel strategy and strategy races like this. Man, one of the best. Like I said, I still thought Jeff was going to be able to run Paul Menard down and get that win, but it was Paul's day that day. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this.
Thank you very much, Matt. I have a lot of social blackmail on Matt Williamson, and this seems like one of the only appropriate outlets to use said blackmail. So I invited him on. He has spilled his guts, and now you all can shame him publicly. And someday he will make an entire series of videos publicly shaming me. And you know what? I'll deserve it. Stories that will live on through the lifespan of our pithy little YouTube channel here. We'll be back next Friday with our 5th edition of the Retro Racing Roundup, and it's going to be the ultimate mix-up because the viewers have decided that we are covering our first non-NASCAR event, and it will be the Monster Jam World Finals from 2017, as voted on by you, the viewers of this channel. I hope I can do a good job. I am very excited. I hope my equipment works before we get to next Friday as well. Be sure to subscribe to get right back here next week. Same time, same place, same face, different location, hopefully. Well, same room. Hope to have my tripod and my camera and my microphone headset back as well. But maybe if you like the setup, let me know. Maybe I'll keep the stick mic because I feel like my hands were a lot more in control this week. Never mind that. It is late and this video has to get edited for you to be watching it right now. So until we meet again here on Turn 200, I am Tommy Cook, and we'll see you in the next one.